Let's say that you want to start a new Indian restaurant in London, and because you think that it's going to make a lot of money, you're excited about it. However, your rational mind tells you to do a quick investment analysis to see if you can get your money back or not. And this is where the payback period comes into picture. It is very useful, and when used along with tools like the NPV and IRR, the payback period can help you figure out how long it will take to get back your investments. Hi all, my name is Dheeraj from WallStreetMojo.com, and in today's video we'll learn all about payback period, how it works, its calculations, uses, as well as limitations. So let's get started. Let us now understand what is payback period, or how do you define payback period. Payback period is nothing but a time period which you might take to recover your initial investment. Okay, so what do you mean by this? Let's say you invest in a project, and how much time you take to recover that. So in a project when you invest, you will expecting certain cash inflows, right? So how much time those cash inflows will cumulative be equal to your initial investment. That will be called as a payback period. Let's understand this whole concept with the help of a simple example. Let's say you have project A, and this project A has certain cash flows, okay? So when you talk about project, there will be, something like year 0 where, you are expected to make initial investments. Then year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 onwards, you will get cash inflows, right? So I'll just put those year 0, year 1, so on and so forth like that in the form of a table, okay? So year 2, year 3, and year 4. Okay, so let's assume that there's a very simple project, project A, which requires an initial investment of say $1,200, and you get cash inflows from this project to the tune of, let's say, $400 each. Okay, so what we are assuming here is that all of these cash inflows are equal. Okay, so equal cash inflows each year. Okay, so that's the assumption that we have made. If this is true, the formula for payback period is very simple. The formula for payback period will be how much is your initial amount, that is 1200, divided by your annual cash inflows. And how much is that? And that is 400 in this case. So this comes out to be 3 years. Okay. So as you can see, this is kind of very simple example, and you can easily do the maths using this visual, right? 1200 is the cash outflow. So 400 you recouped in the first year, second year, and third year. And this will be your payback period, 3 years, right? So that's how you calculate your payback period. Let's assume that this was 300, okay? So instead of 400, this was 300 each year, okay? So let me do that. So how much will be the payback period in this case? So if it is 300, 300, 300, 300, it will take 4 years to recover the original investment, right? So instead of 3 years, 400, I'll put 300, and this will lead to 4 years, correct? Now, let's assume that this is 500 each year, okay? So, what will be the answer? So, instead of 300, I'll put 500 here, and we get the answer as 2.4 years, okay? So, in the first 2 years, you will recover your first $1,000, and the remaining $200 will get recovered in another 0.4 years, okay? So calculation of payback period with equal cash inflows each year, like $500 each, was fairly simple process. But how about unequal cash flows? What will be the formula in that case? Okay, so let's understand how to go about calculating payback period for unequal cash flows. So let me just copy and paste this and create a project B. okay, with unequal cash flows. What do you mean by that? It will be different for each year. Let's say $400, $500 for the second year, let's say $600 for the third year, and say another $600 for the fourth year. Okay, so these are like unequal. They're spread out different. Okay, now how do you calculate the payback period in this case? Now, in order to calculate the payback period for this case, you have to understand this term called as cumulative cash inflows. Okay, what do you mean by cumulative cash inflows? When we try to calculate payback period, we want to understand, whether your cash outflow is equal to your cash inflow in which year, right? So we want to cumulatively know in which year, this is going to happen, right? So let's look at the first year. What is a cumulative cash flow at the end of first year? That will be 400, right? What about the second year? Cumulative cash flow will be what cash flows we got in year 1 plus your year 2. So that will be $400 plus your $500. So that makes it $900. Okay. What about year 3? It will be $900 plus another $600. And what about year 4? This will be $1,500 plus another $600. So as you can see here, in which year does this happen? Okay, so we wanted to recover $1,200 and we see that in year 3, we have recouped or recovered almost all of it, right? So one thing is for sure in this case is that our payback period will lie somewhere between year 2 and year 3. Because on one side, we were able to recover only $900 by the end of year 2, but we recovered more than $1,200 at the end of year 3. So there has to be a point between which, we get the exact payback period. So how do you calculate that is the key now. So for that, we need to understand, okay, there is one more term called as balance, okay. What we understand by balance here is that how much amount is left to recover. Okay, so at the end of year 1, we recovered, let's say, $400. So how much is the balance left that is to be recovered? In the future years, that will be 400 minus 1,200, that will be $800. So that's what I'm trying to do now. Okay, so 400, and when we subtract 1,200 from there, we get $800. Okay, now what about the same balance at the end of year 2? At the end of year 2, it will be 900 minus 1,200, that will be $300. Okay, so $300 is still left to be recovered. What about at the end of year 3? We have recovered not only the $300, but we have now additional cash inflows of $300 at the end of year 3. And year 4, we have positive cash inflows cumulatively of $900. Okay, so obviously the point is between year 2 and year 3, and the balance will be useful for calculating the payback period now. So the payback period here will be, obviously it is 1 year, 2 years, and 2 plus some years. Okay, so I'm writing like this, 2 years plus something. And what is that plus something is the calculation that we are going to do now. So at the end of year 2, we have $300 as balance. And if you look at year 3, the cash flow is $600. Okay, so assuming that the cash inflows happen throughout the year, how much time will you take to recover $300 from that? So if you look at the calculation, this will be $300 divided by 600, right? So it will take half a year to recover your investment of $300. Okay, so the fraction which we are talking about, 2 years plus dash, is nothing but 0.5. So this will be equal to 2.5 years. Okay, so the payback comes out to be like this in case of unequal cash flows. Now let us look at how payback period is used in capital budgeting. So basically, payback period is used to compare multiple projects. Okay, so let's say if you have two projects, project A and project B. So basically, you will select the one which has a lower payback period. Okay, so select the one that has lower payback period. What does this imply? Now, this implies that select the project which will give you your investments or return your investments at a faster pace. So say for example, if there is a project A, okay, project A, that has a payback period of, let's say, 10 years. Okay. And then there is project B that has a payback period of, let's say, 3 years. Okay. So which project should you select? Project A or project B? So obviously, when you look at and compare between these two projects, project B is a good one, right? But should you select it or not, it depends on something like a benchmark period. Okay, and it comes from the management. So if management is expecting, let's say, that whatever project they invest into, it should have a maximum payback period of, let's say, 4 years. Okay, in that case, this project B is a better option, right? Because they expect any project which they invest in to have not more than 4 years of payback period, but project B has now even lesser than that. So you will select project B, right? But in this case, you'll actually reject project A. But let's say if this benchmark payback period that comes from the management is just 2 years, okay? Now, in that case, you will go ahead and reject both of them. In that case, you will obviously reject both of them because they both have a higher payback period than 2 years. Now, let us look at the limitations of payback period. In order to understand the limitations of payback period, let's consider this project, project A and project B, okay? Now, if we look at the overall project, both projects require $1,200 as initial investments, and both of them generate, around $1,600 in the span of 4 years. Okay. Now, which project will you choose? According to payback period, how much is the payback period for project A? That is, if you look at project A, this will be 1, 2, and 3. You will take 3 years to recover your initial investment. Okay. So for project A, it is 3 years. Okay. How about project B? Project B will take 3 years again. 1,000, 100, 100. This is 1,200. So this is also 3 years. Okay. Now, if you have to pick one of them intuitively, think of which one will you pick. Okay. Will you pick project A or will you pick project B? Now, if I were to select either of the two, I would select project B. And the reason is that there is this concept called as time value of money. Okay. I hope you have understood the concept of time value of money in previous lectures of our capital budgeting. And if you haven't, you can go ahead and look at this time value of money concept in very much detail in this video of ours. However, let's go back to this topic and see what is happening here. Now, imagine in this project B, you're getting $1,000 in year 1 itself, right? Now, and in project A, you are getting $1,200 at the end of 3rd year. Okay, so that value of $1,200 at the end of 3 years, if you consider the present value of that $1,200 will be much, much less because of inflation and other things as well. However, in project B, you are able to recover a sizable amount of that $1,200 in the initial first year itself. So time has value, and that's what I'm trying to tell you, that payback period doesn't consider that as one of the options. And a better approach is to actually look at discounted payback period. Another limitation of payback period is that it completely disregards the amount of cash inflows that were generated after the payback period. So to understand this, let's look at these project A and project B, and it will be quite clear after that. So let's say there are two projects, project A and project B, and we have $1,200 as the initial investment. Now for both the projects, as we can see here, the project A has a payback period of 3 years and project B has a payback period of 3 years. There's one critical difference between project A and project B is that project B continues for 2 more years, year 5 and year 6, and it gives continuous cash inflows of $400 each in the 2 years. Now, which project will you select? According to payback period, both of them are same, right? So, would you select A or B? According to payback, it's kind of neutral, but you intuitively know that this is generating more cash inflows. So, this becomes another limitation of payback period. It completely disregards what happens after the payback period. Okay, So this is one limitation. So in order to solve this limitation, you will have to use multiple capital budgeting techniques like the net present value, or you can use internal rate of returns, or there are other ways in which you can also look at capital budgeting. But payback period is generally not used in isolation. It is used with net present value and IRR to select the project.
As we conclude today's discussion, a big thank you to everyone who tuned in from the Wall Street Mojo team. But hold on, the financial adventure continues. The next episode unfolds on Tuesday, and we're super excited about what's in store. Make sure to subscribe and turn on those notifications so you don't miss out on the financial insights coming your way. Until next time, this is the Wall Street Mojo team signing off. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stay Wall Street Mojo awesome.